Dr. June Park had always been considered crazy by his colleagues. For 15 years, he had been working on theories that most scientists dismissed as impossible. His funding had been cut 3 times. His papers were rejected by every major journal. Students avoided his classes, but today, General Sujin Nam was sitting in his cramped office, listening to him talk about impossible things. The void ships do not actually absorb energy, June explained, pulling up diagrams on his ancient computer. They redirect it, channel it into another dimension maybe, or convert it to a form we cannot detect. But the important thing is this process is not instant. There is a gap, a fraction of a second where their defensive systems are vulnerable. Sujin studied the data. She was a career military officer, not a scientist, but she understood tactics. And what June was describing was a weakness. Small, almost insignificant, but a weakness nonetheless. How long is this gap? She asked. 2.3 seconds, June said. When they drain power from a target, their own shields drop for exactly 2.3 seconds. That is not much time. No, June agreed. But it is enough. If we can coordinate our attacks, hit them all at once during that gap, we might actually hurt them. Sujin sat back in her chair. The Void Fleet would reach Earth in 10 days. 10 days to prepare a defense against an enemy that had destroyed everything in its path. 10 days to save 8 billion lives. What do you need? She asked. Everything, June said simply. Every ship we have. Every weapon. And people willing to try things that have never been done before. Sujin pulled out her comm and began making calls. By the end of the day, June found himself in command of Earth's entire scientific and military-industrial complex. If his crazy ideas failed, humanity died anyway. They had nothing to lose. The work began immediately. In orbital factories around Earth and Mars, workers started retrofitting ships with old technology. Railguns that fired solid metal slugs. Chemical rockets that did not rely on power cores. Even old-fashioned nuclear warheads from the previous century. Why are we using this ancient stuff? One engineer asked. Because it does not use power, another explained. The void ships drain energy weapons, but a chunk of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed, that is just physics, cannot drain physics. Meanwhile, at a training facility on the moon, pilots were learning to fly in ways no modern pilot had been taught. Wing Commander Hanul Yoon stood in front of a group of 200 men and women, all young, all volunteers. Everything you learned in academy is wrong, she told them. Modern space combat is about sophisticated targeting systems, energy management, and maintaining distance. Forget all of that. We are going back to the basics, to how humans fought when they had nothing but courage and creativity. She pulled up footage from ancient Earth wars, aerial combat from the 20th century, pilots in primitive aircraft twisting and turning, getting close enough to see their enemies. We are going to fly like they did, Hanel said. Fast, close, unpredictable. The void ships have sensors designed to track energy signatures. Our new fighters barely register. We will get in close, hit them hard, and get out before they know what happened. The pilots looked at each other nervously. What she was describing was suicide. But they had all seen the footage from Titan Station. They knew what would happen if they failed. Training began immediately. Pilots practiced flying with minimal power. They learned to navigate by sight and instinct rather than computers. They trained to operate in complete radio silence, using hand signals and predetermined patterns. In orbit around Earth, civilian ships were being converted into weapons. Cargo haulers had railguns welded to their hulls. Passenger liners were loaded with missiles. Even the old colony ships that had been in mothballs for decades were being pulled out and armed. A merchant captain named Bora Kim stood on the bridge of her freighter, watching as military contractors installed weapon systems. I carried grain for 20 years, she said to the installation chief. Now I am going to war. We all are, the chief replied. Your ship and about 300 others. Not much against 12 void capital ships, but it is what we have. Bora nodded. Her crew had voted unanimously to volunteer. They had families on Earth, friends, homes. If the void reached the planet, all of that would be ash. Dr. June worked around the clock, analyzing every scrap of data from previous encounters. He discovered something interesting. The void ships moved in patterns, mathematical patterns. They were not random or chaotic. They were following algorithms. They are automated, he told Sujin, or at least partially automated. Real intelligence would be more random, more creative. These ships are following programming, so we can predict them, Sujin said, to a degree, but that also means they can adapt. Learn. The longer the fight goes on, the more they will understand our tactics. Sujin understood the implication. They would get one chance. One coordinated attack using every advantage they could create. If it failed, there would be no second chance. She began organizing Earth's forces into strike groups. Each group had a specific role. Some would draw the void ship's attention. Others would position themselves in the debris fields around the moon, waiting in ambush. The civilian ships would form the outer layer, expendable but numerous. "We are going to hide ships inside asteroids," one admiral said during the planning session. "Gut out the centers, park a frigate inside, and wait." "That is insane," another officer said. "So is everything else we are doing," Sujin replied. "Insane is all we have left." 5 days before the Void Fleet's arrival, Hanul took her fighter wing on a practice run. 200 small craft launched from lunar bases, flying in complete silence. They practiced approaching a target using the moon itself as cover, emerging at the last second to simulate an attack run. It was sloppy. Pilots nearly collided. Timing was off. Half the wing emerged too early, the other half too late. After the run, Hanul gathered them together. "That was terrible," she said bluntly. "If this was real, half of you would be dead and the other half would have accomplished nothing." The pilots looked discouraged. "But," Hanul continued, "this was your first try at something completely new. You are learning to fight in a way that has not been done in 200 years, and you are doing it in 5 days instead of 5 years. So we try again, and again, until we get it right." They practiced for 16 hours straight, again and again, emerging from behind the moon, coordinating their attack runs, learning to trust their instincts instead of their computers. By the 3rd day, they were getting better. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the civilian population was being moved to shelters deep underground. Entire cities were evacuating. Children who had never seen the sky asked their parents when they could go home. Parents lied and said soon, knowing they might never see the surface again. Ambassador Jiwon Lee sent one final message to the Galactic Council. Not a plea for help, but a record. She documented everything: the Void's attacks, Earth's preparations, the fact that humanity stood alone because the Council had abandoned them. "We will fight," she said into the camera. "We will fight with everything we have. And if we fall, let the galaxy remember that we asked for help and were refused. Let them remember that when the Void comes for them next." The message was transmitted across every channel, in every language the Council used. Some species heard it and felt ashamed. Others dismissed it as the desperate words of a doomed civilization. 2 days before the Void arrived, Commander Daewon Kim returned from the Council station. He had been trying one last time to get help, but found only closed doors and empty promises. He landed on Earth and immediately reported to Sujin's command center. "Nothing?" she asked. "Worse than nothing," Daewon said. "Fear. Some of the Council species have seen the Void before. They paid tribute to make them leave. They sacrificed colonies to buy peace. And they think we should do the same. They think we should surrender and hope for mercy." Sujin laughed, a sound without humor. "We tried talking. We tried asking nicely. Now we try something the Council apparently never thought of. We fight back." On the final day before the Void's arrival, every human ship capable of flying moved into position. Some hid in asteroid fields. Others positioned themselves in the moon's shadow. The civilian vessels formed a loose perimeter, looking vulnerable and disorganized. It was a trap. The most elaborate, desperate trap humanity had ever conceived. Hanul sat in her fighter, parked on the dark side of the moon. Around her, 199 other fighters waited in silence. No power except life support. No emissions. Just pilots sitting in the dark waiting for the signal. "Are you scared?" her wingman asked over a private channel. "Terrified," Hanul admitted. "But I am more scared of doing nothing." The hours ticked down. Military and civilian alike waited, holding their breath, watching the sensors for the moment when the Void Collective would emerge from dark space. When they came, humanity would be ready. Not with superior technology or greater numbers, but with desperation, creativity, and the simple refusal to go quietly into the night. Captain Minho Choi gripped the armrest of his command chair, as another explosion rocked the UES Indomitable. The flagship of Earth's defense fleet had seen better days. Hell, it had seen better hours. The battle had been raging for 6 hours now, and they were losing badly. Shield strength at 40%, Lieutenant Sora Kang called from the tactical station. Her voice was steady, professional, but Minho could hear the strain underneath. We cannot take many more hits like that. Through the view screen, Minho watched the Void Collective ships advancing. They looked wrong somehow. Where human ships were built from metal and composites, these things seemed organic. Their hulls rippled like skin. They moved through space with an unnatural grace, as if swimming rather than flying. And they were winning. All ships, pattern Delta, Minho ordered into his comm. Hit them fast, then break away. Do not let them get a lock on you. The human fleet consisted of 47 ships, destroyers, frigates, and a handful of cruisers. Everything Earth could spare. Against them were 12 void vessels, each one 3 times the size of the Indomitable. The math was not in humanity's favor. Minho had learned something important in the past 6 hours. Human weapons could damage the void ships, but barely. Railguns left small dents. Missiles exploded against their hulls, doing minimal damage. Energy weapons seemed to be absorbed, making the enemy ships glow brighter. But the Void's weapons were devastating. They fired beams of pure darkness that passed through shields as if they did not exist. When those beams touched a ship, the vessel simply stopped working. Power died. Life support failed. The ship became a tomb floating in space. Captain, Sora said urgently. They are deploying ground forces at Titan Station. Minho pulled up the feed from the mining colony orbiting Saturn. What he saw made his blood run cold. Small craft were launching from the void ships, heading straight for the station. And when they docked, things emerged. They were not quite machines and not quite alive. Bipedal forms made of the same dark material as the ships. They moved with terrible purpose, breaking through airlocks and tearing through corridors. The station's security forces fought back, but bullets seemed to pass through the creatures without effect. Minho opened a channel to the station. Titan Station, this is the Indomitable. We are coming to evacuate. Hold on. A woman's face appeared on the screen. Yuna Han, the station's chief engineer. Her face was covered in soot, and he could hear explosions in the background. Captain, we have over 2,000 people here. Most are civilians, families, children. I know, Minho said. Start getting everyone to the evacuation bays. We will buy you time. How? Yuna asked. Your ships cannot even scratch them. Minho did not have an answer, but he had to try. All ships, he broadcast, form up on me. We are going to Titan Station. Engage any void forces between us and the colony. The Indomitable surged forward, its engines burning at maximum. The rest of the fleet followed. Minho knew this was probably suicide, but those were people down there. Human beings who had signed up to mine resources for Earth, not to die screaming in the dark. As they approached Titan Station, 3 void ships moved to intercept. Their hulls pulsed with that strange dark energy. Minho could see smaller ships launching from their bays heading for his fleet. Weapons free, he ordered. Target the small craft first. The space around them erupted in fire and metal. Human missiles streaked toward the incoming void fighters. Some hit, exploding in bursts of light. But the fighters kept coming, dozens of them, their weapons charging. Then something unexpected happened. Captain, Sora said, her voice filled with surprise. The void fighters are not shielded. Our point defense systems are tearing them apart. Minho leaned forward, watching the tactical display. She was right. The smaller craft were vulnerable. Whatever made the big ships nearly invulnerable did not extend to the fighters. All ships focus fire on the fighters, Minho ordered. Clear a path to the station. The human fleet's point defense cannons lit up space with tracer fire. The void fighters began exploding, their strange organic hulls rupturing under the sustained barrage. It was not much, but it was something. A weakness they could exploit. We are through, Sora reported. Clear path to Titan Station. The Indomitable pulled alongside the massive mining facility. Minho could see the damage already done. Whole sections were exposed to vacuum. Bodies floated in space, frozen and lifeless. But the main habitat modules were still intact. Begin evacuation, Minho ordered. Every ship that can take passengers, dock now. For the next hour, the human fleet worked frantically. Ships docked with the station, taking on as many people as they could. Families crowded into cargo bays. Children were strapped into seats meant for soldiers. The ships groaned under the weight of so many people. Meanwhile, Minho and 5 other ships formed a defensive perimeter. The 3 void capital ships hung back as if studying the humans. Their weapons were not firing. They just watched. Why are they not attacking? Sora asked. Minho shook his head. I do not know. Maybe they are learning, adapting. Inside the station, Yuna worked with her engineering team to hold the facility together. The Void ground forces were still inside, methodically clearing sections. But Yuna had a plan. She had spent 10 years working on mining stations. She knew every inch of Titan's layout. Seal sections 12 through 18, she ordered. Vent them to space. Her team worked quickly, overriding safety protocols. The sections where the Void creatures had gathered suddenly opened to the vacuum of space. The creatures were pulled out into the Void, their forms dissolving in the absolute cold. It worked, but only temporarily. More landing craft were approaching. Everyone to the evacuation bays now, Yuna called over the station-wide comm. This is not a drill. Move, move, move! She ran through the corridors, helping people who had fallen, directing traffic toward the docking areas. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of metal being torn apart. The creatures were breaking through her sealed sections. Yuna made it to the last evacuation bay just as the final group of civilians was boarding a transport. She counted heads quickly. They were missing people. Dozens of them. But there was no time left. Go, she told the pilot. Get them out of here. What about you? The pilot asked. I need to shut down the reactor, Yuna lied. Otherwise it might explode and take half of your ships with it. I will take an escape pod. The pilot did not believe her, but he also did not have a choice. The transport sealed its airlock and pulled away. Yuna watched it go, then turned and ran deeper into the station. She was not going to the reactor. She was going to the main fuel depot. If she was going to die here, she would take as many of those things with her as possible. Above the station, Minho received confirmation that the last transport had launched. All ships break orbit. We are leaving. Captain, we are reading one life sign still on the station, Sora said. Minho checked the sensors. Someone was in the fuel depot. He knew what that meant. Someone was going to blow the station. Get us out of here, he ordered quietly. Best speed. The human fleet began to pull away. The 3 Void ships finally moved, their weapons charging. But they were too slow. The human vessels scattered, using the debris field around Saturn as cover. Behind them, Titan Station exploded. The fuel depot went first, then the reactor. Then the stored explosives from the mining operations. The blast was massive, a miniature sun that expanded outward. The Void ground forces still on the station were vaporized instantly. The 3 capital ships were caught in the outer edge of the blast, their hulls buckling under the pressure. It was not enough to destroy them, but it was enough to hurt them. As the Indomitable raced toward Earth, Minho checked the casualty reports. They had saved nearly 60% of Titan Station's population. Over 1,200 people, but 800 were dead, including the brave engineer who had given her life to cover their escape. Set course for Earth, Minho ordered. Best possible speed. Sir, Sora said. The Void fleet is following us. Minho nodded. He had expected that. They had bought time, saved lives, but the enemy was still coming, and now they were heading straight for humanity's homeworld. Earth had maybe 2 weeks to prepare for the end of the world. The massive station hung in space like a jewel, its crystalline towers reaching out in all directions. Commander Daewon Kim stood at the viewing port of Earth's shuttle, watching as they approached the heart of galactic civilization. After 200 years of dreaming about the stars, humanity had finally made it. They had built ships that could cross light years in days. They had reached out into the cosmos and found others waiting. But today was not about celebration. Beside him, Dr. Hannah Park checked her datapad for the 100th time. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, reviewing the evidence they had gathered. Images of strange ships, energy signatures that made no sense, reports from the outer colonies about something moving in the dark spaces between stars. They have to listen, she said quietly. The data is clear. Daewon wanted to believe her. He had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat. He knew what real threats looked like. What was coming toward Earth was not a misunderstanding or a few pirates. It was an armada, a fleet of ships that had appeared at the edge of human space 3 months ago, destroying everything in their path. The Void Collective, they called themselves, in the only message they had sent. There would be no negotiation, no mercy, just consumption. Ambassador Ji-Won Lee joined them at the viewport. She was older than both of them, her hair gray, her face lined with years of service. She had spent decades preparing for this moment, for when humanity would finally take its place among the stars. But not like this. Never like this. Remember, she said, we are asking for guidance, not charity. We are new to this galaxy, and we need help understanding what we face. Be humble but be honest. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud. The airlock opened and they stepped into a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls shifted colors as they walked, responding to their presence. Everywhere they looked there were aliens. Creatures of every shape and size. Some walked on legs. Others floated. A few seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. A guide met them, a being that looked like liquid metal poured into a vaguely humanoid shape. It did not speak, but somehow they understood it was leading them to the council chamber. The chamber was enormous. Thousands of seats rose in tiers around a central platform. Most were filled. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had come to watch the humans make their first official petition. Some looked curious. Others seemed amused. A few appeared completely uninterested. At the highest tier sat the council's leaders, the Mentari, beings made of living crystal that hummed with barely contained energy. The Ephrons, creatures of gas and thought that existed in specialized containment fields. The Vaktar, massive beings covered in scales that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. Jiwan walked to the center platform. Daewon and Hana followed, standing slightly behind her. The chamber fell silent. "Honored Council," Jiwan began, her voice steady. "We come before you as representatives of Earth, newest members of the galactic community. We come seeking aid against a threat that endangers not just our world, but potentially many others." A screen appeared above them, showing the data Hana had compiled. Images of the Void Collective ships, dark vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. Recordings of their attacks on human mining stations. The silence of every attempt at communication. 3 months ago, these ships appeared in our space. They have destroyed 2 of our colonies. Killed over 50,000 people. We have tried to communicate. We have tried to defend ourselves. Nothing works. Our weapons barely scratch their hulls. Our messages go unanswered. Daewon watched the council's faces, trying to read their reactions. Some seemed interested. Others looked bored. A few of the representatives in the lower tiers were whispering to each other. "We are not asking you to fight our battles," Jiwan continued. "We are asking for knowledge. For guidance. Have you seen these ships before? Do you know what they want? How can we defend our world?" A Mentari named Crystallis spoke first. Its voice rang like bells. "The young species brings tales of danger. Tales we have heard many times before. New civilizations always believe they face extinction. It is the arrogance of youth." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. An Ephron drifted forward. "Your species has been in space for less than a century. You have primitive weapons and barely understand the physics of faster-than-light travel. Perhaps what you face is simply a force beyond your comprehension. Perhaps you misinterpret scientific phenomena as hostile action. We know the difference between a natural phenomenon and an attack," Hana said, unable to keep quiet. "We have footage. We have survivors. These ships are real, and they are destroying everything they encounter." A Vaktar elder rumbled with what might have been laughter. "The human scientist speaks of things she cannot understand. Your species is an infant crying at shadows. The galaxy is vast and old. What you call an armada might be automated mining drones. What you call an attack might be an unfortunate accident." Daewon felt anger building in his chest, but Jiwan placed a hand on his arm. "Stay calm," the gesture said. "They had expected this." "Then help us understand," Jiwan said. "Share your knowledge. Show us what we are missing. If we are wrong, we will gladly accept correction. But if we are right and this threat is real, it will not stop at Earth. Space is vast, yes, but these ships are moving. They will reach other worlds eventually." The council chamber filled with voices, all speaking at once. Arguments broke out between representatives. Some seemed to want to help. Others dismissed the humans entirely. A few looked uncomfortable, as if they knew something they were not saying. Finally, the High Archon called for order. Its voice, translated through machines into something humans could understand, echoed through the chamber. "The Council has heard the petition of Earth. We will now vote on whether to provide assistance or invoke the non-interference protocol for species of less than 500 years of spacefaring experience." The vote took less than 5 minutes. The result was unanimous. No assistance, no guidance, nothing. The Council finds that Earth's concerns are insufficient to warrant intervention, the High Archon declared. "You are a young species experiencing the difficulties of expansion. Learn from your challenges, grow stronger, Return to us when you have proven yourselves. Ji-won stood frozen for a moment. Then she bowed, a gesture of respect that none of the aliens would understand. Thank you for your time, she said, her voice empty of emotion. They walked back to their shuttle in silence. As they passed through the corridors, Daewon saw some of the alien representatives watching them. A few looked sympathetic. Others seemed relieved the humans were leaving, but Hana noticed something else. She had studied xenobiology for years, learned to read alien expressions and body language. And what she saw in some of those faces was fear. Not fear of humans. Fear of something else. Something they had recognized in the images of the Void Collective. They knew, she realized. Some of them had seen these ships before, and they were too afraid to even speak about it. As their shuttle departed the station, Daewon looked back at the glittering structure. Humanity had reached out to the stars asking for help. The stars had said no. Now they would have to face the darkness alone. He pulled up a communication screen and began composing a message to Earth's Defense Command. They had 3 months, maybe less, before the Void reached the solar system. 3 months to prepare for a war they could not win, unless they found a way to fight that nobody had tried before. The Void fleet appeared exactly when predicted. 12 massive ships dark against the stars emerging from the space between spaces. They hung in the void beyond the moon's orbit, their organic hulls pulsing with that terrible energy that made human sensors scream warnings. Captain Minho Choi watched them from the bridge of the Indomitable. His ship was positioned at the front of the human defensive line, making itself an obvious target. That was the plan. Draw them in. Make them confident. All ships hold position, he ordered. Let them come to us. The Void ships began moving forward in perfect formation, mathematical and precise. They had learned from previous encounters. Their fighters stayed close, protected by the capital ship's energy fields. They were not making the same mistakes, but humans had learned too. They are charging weapons, Lieutenant Sorakang reported. Targeting our forward ships. Deploy the decoys, Minho ordered. 100 small drones launched from the human fleet, each one broadcasting the same energy signature as a full-sized warship. To the Void sensors, it looked like humanity's entire fleet was positioned right in front of them. The Void ships fired. Beams of darkness lanced across space, striking the drones. The small machines died instantly, their power cores drained. But they had done their job. The Void ships had revealed their positions and wasted energy on false targets. Now, Minho said quietly. From the asteroid field, 30 human ships powered up and fired. Railguns that had been cold and silent suddenly roared to life. Solid metal slugs, each one weighing several tons, streaked toward the Void fleet at impossible speeds. The Void ship's defensive systems activated, trying to drain the incoming projectiles. But you cannot drain a chunk of metal. It has no power to take. The slugs hit home, punching through shields and tearing into organic hulls. One Void ship staggered, its formation broken. Green fluid leaked from the wounds, freezing instantly in space. Confirmed hits, Sora reported. We hurt them, but the Void learned fast. The ships adjusted their formation, presenting their thickest armor toward the asteroid field. Their weapons swiveled, targeting the human ships that had revealed themselves. All ships scatter, Minho ordered. The human vessels broke formation, each one flying in a different direction. The Void's beams missed, striking empty space. From her fighter on the moon's dark side, Hanul Yoon watched the battle unfold. The main fleet was keeping the Void occupied. Now it was time for the fighters to join in. All wings, prepare for launch, she called over the squadron channel. Remember your training. Stay low, stay fast, and do not stop moving. 200 fighters lifted off from hidden bases on the moon's surface. They flew in complete silence, using the lunar landscape to mask their approach. The moon itself blocked them from the Void's sensors. The fighters emerged from behind the moon at full thrust, a swarm of tiny craft racing toward the Void fleet's flank. They were so small and generated so little energy that the Void ships did not detect them until they were already in weapons range. Break and attack, Hanul ordered. Pick your targets. The fighters scattered, each one heading for a different Void ship. They carried no energy weapons, just old-fashioned missiles and rotary cannons. Primitive, but impossible to drain. Hanul targeted the nearest capital ship, her fighter screaming toward its massive hull. The thing was the size of a city, covered in strange organic growths that pulsed with light. She armed her missiles and waited until she could see individual details on the hull. Fox 3, she called. launching her entire payload. 6 missiles streaked away, their chemical engines burning bright. They struck the void ship near what looked like a sensory cluster. Explosions bloomed across the hull. The ship shuddered. All around her, other pilots were doing the same. Missiles and cannon fire tore into the void ships from angles they had not protected. It was like being attacked by mosquitoes. Each individual attack did minimal damage, but there were so many of them. A void ship tried to swat the fighters with its beam weapons, but the small craft were too fast, too maneuverable. The beams missed by meters. Fighters danced around the incoming fire, twisting and rolling in ways no sane pilot would attempt. "Stay on them," Haniel called. "Do not give them time to adapt." But the void was adapting anyway. Smaller weapons began emerging from the capital ship's hulls. Point defense systems designed for exactly this kind of attack. Haniel saw 3 fighters explode as the defensive fire found its mark. "We are taking losses," her wingman reported. "Keep attacking," Haniel ordered. "We just need to keep them busy a little longer." Deep in the asteroid field, Dr. June Park monitored the battle from his command ship. He was watching the void ship's energy signatures, waiting for the exact right moment. "They are about to drain the forward human ships," he said to General Sujin, who was commanding from Earth's orbital station. "Power levels spiking, defensive fields fluctuating. All ambush ships," Sujin broadcast, "prepare to fire on my mark." Hidden throughout the battle space, 75 human ships waited. Some were buried inside hollowed-out asteroids. Others floated among debris fields, powered down and playing dead. Each one was positioned perfectly, their targeting computers locked on specific points on the void ships. The void fleet fired their draining beams at the main human force. Captain Minho's Indomitable and 5 other ships suddenly went dark. Their power cores emptied in seconds. The ships drifted, lifeless, and just as Dr. June had predicted, the void ship's shields dropped. 2.3 seconds of vulnerability. "Now," Sujin ordered. "All ships fire." 75 ships opened fire simultaneously. Railguns, missiles, and even a few modified mining lasers all targeted the same spots, the carefully calculated weak points in the void ships' hulls. The effect was devastating. With their shields down, the void ships were vulnerable. Projectiles punched through armor. Missiles detonated inside the ships themselves. One void capital ship split in half, its organic structure unable to handle the damage. Another lost all power, drifting dead in space. A third began venting atmosphere. Its hull breached in a dozen places, but they were not done yet. The remaining void ships recovered quickly, their shields snapping back into place. They turned their weapons on the ambush ships, and this time their targeting was perfect. 6 human ships exploded before they could retreat back into cover. The battle raged for hours. Ships darted in and out of cover. Fighters made attack runs and retreated to rearm. The void and humanity traded blows, each adapting to the other's tactics. In the middle of it all, Captain Minho's ship suddenly powered back up. The Indomitable had not been drained. It had shut down voluntarily, playing dead. Now it reactivated right in the middle of the void formation. "All weapons, point-blank range," Minho ordered. "Fire everything." The Indomitable unleashed every weapon it had at the void ship directly beside it. Railguns fired until their barrels glowed red. Missiles launched from every tube. Even the point defense cannons were redirected at the enemy. At such close range, even with shields, the damage was immense. The void ship's hull ruptured. Its organic structure began to collapse, unable to maintain integrity. But the dying ship was not finished. It turned all its weapons on the Indomitable. Dark beams lanced out, draining the human ship's power in seconds. Both vessels went dark, drifting together in a deadly embrace. "Evacuate the ship," Minho ordered. "Everyone to the escape pods now." Sora grabbed his arm. "Captain, we can restart the reactor. We can still fight." Minho looked at her. "Not this time. Get everyone off." "That is an order." The crew evacuated quickly, escape pods launching in all directions. Minho was the last one on the bridge. He looked at the screens, now dark and lifeless. His ship, his home for 10 years, was dead. But as he moved toward the escape pod, he had an idea. A terrible, beautiful idea. He ran to the engineering deck instead. The reactor was offline but intact. The helm controls were dead, but mechanical backup still worked. And the ship was drifting directly toward the Void flagship. Minho began manually overriding safety systems. He set the reactor to restart and then immediately overload. He locked the mechanical steering to maintain course. Then he recorded a message. "To anyone watching," he said into the ship's log, "I am Captain Minho Choi of the United Earthship Indomitable. We were told the Void could not be beaten. We were told to surrender. We were told we were too primitive, too young, too weak. They were wrong. Humanity does not surrender. We stand, we fight, and if we fall, we take our enemies with us." He set the timer for 5 minutes and ran for the last escape pod. The pod launched just as the reactor came back online. Minho watched through the small window as his ship, now glowing with barely contained energy, continued its drift toward the Void flagship. The Void tried to move, but they were too slow. The Indomitable struck the flagship dead center, and a second later its reactor detonated. The explosion was like a miniature star. The flagship simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly. The 2 Void ships nearest to it were caught in the blast, their hulls cracking and breaking apart. Across the battlefield, humans and Void alike stopped fighting for a moment, stunned by what they had just witnessed. When the light faded, 4 Void capital ships remained. But they were damaged, disorganized, and for the first time they retreated. The massive ships turned and began moving away from Earth, back toward deep space. On Earth's orbital station, General Sujin, the news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Humanity, the species the Council had dismissed as primitive newcomers, had defeated the Void Collective. The same Void that had terrorized civilized space for over a century. The same enemy that entire Council fleets had fled from. 3 weeks after the Battle of Luna, Ambassador Ji-Wan Lee returned to the Council station. This time she was not asking for help. She was delivering a message. The Council chamber was packed, every seat filled. Representatives from species that had never shown interest in Earth before were now watching with intense curiosity. Some looked impressed. Others appeared worried. A few seemed afraid of what humanity had become. Ji-Wan walked to the central platform without ceremony. She carried a data chip containing complete footage of the battle, unedited, uncensored. Every moment of humanity's desperate stand. "Honored Council," she began, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. "3 months ago we came before you asking for help, for guidance. We told you about the Void Collective approaching our world. You voted unanimously to deny our request." She paused, letting that sink in. "You told us we were inexperienced, paranoid, that we were seeing threats where none existed. You invoked the non-interference protocol and sent us away." The Council members shifted uncomfortably. Some would not meet her eyes, so we went home, Ji-Wan continued. "And we prepared. We took every ship we had, every weapon, every person willing to fight. And when the Void came, we stood against them alone." She activated the data chip. Holographic displays filled the chamber, showing the battle from multiple angles. Council representatives watched in silence as human ships fought and died. They saw the desperate tactics, the sacrifices. The moment when Captain Minho crashed his ship into the Void flagship. When the footage ended, the chamber remained silent. 31 Void capital ships destroyed, Ji-Wan said. 4 more driven off. We lost 60% of our fleet and over 40,000 lives. But we won. Earth still stands. She looked up at the Council leaders. And while we fought, while humans died defending not just our world but potentially yours as well, where was the Council? Where were the advanced civilizations with your superior technology and centuries of experience? Still silence. You were hiding, Ji-Wan said. Because you had seen the Void before. Some of you had faced them and paid tribute to make them leave. You sacrificed colonies, paid in lives and resources, anything to avoid fighting. So when we asked for help, you said no. Not because you followed protocol, but because you were afraid. Finally, one of the Mentari spoke. The human makes accusations without proof. Does she? A new voice joined the conversation. Counselor Vexim stepped forward from the lower tiers. He was a reptilian being, his scales marked with scars. My world was attacked by the Void 40 years ago. We lost an entire continent. 3 billion dead. And what did the Council do? They sent condolences and told us to pay the Void's price, to give them what they wanted so they would leave. Other counselors began speaking up. Stories emerged. Attack after attack, all covered up, all hidden behind bureaucracy and protocols. For over a century, the Council had known about the Void. And for over a century, they had done nothing but appease them. The humans did what we should have done generations ago, Vexim said. They fought back. And they won. The High Archon finally spoke. The Council acknowledges that perhaps we were too quick to dismiss Earth's concerns. We would like to offer full membership immediately, along with access to our technology databases and defensive networks. Ji-won smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, the chamber erupted in shocked whispers. No? The High Archon repeated. We came to you asking for help when we were vulnerable, Ji-won said. You refused. We came asking for knowledge, for guidance, for simple acknowledgement that our concern was real. You dismissed us. Now you offer us everything we asked for? Because you are impressed? Or because you are afraid of what we might become? She moved closer to the High Archon's platform. We do not need your technology. We do not need your databases. We proved at Luna that human ingenuity is worth more than advanced weapons. What we needed was allies. People who would stand with us when things were dark. And you were not there. Then what does Earth want? The High Archon asked. Nothing from you, Ji-won said. Earth will forge its own path now. We will build our own alliances with species who share our values, who understand that sometimes you have to stand and fight, even when the odds are against you. She turned to address the entire chamber. To any species here who has been dismissed by the Council, who has been told you are too young or too primitive or too insignificant, Earth extends an invitation. Join us, let us build something new together, something based on mutual respect, not condescension. Counselor Vexim was the first to step forward. My people would be honored to stand with Earth. Others followed. Species from the outer systems, the newer worlds, the ones the Council had always treated as lesser. Within an hour, 14 species had pledged to join what Ji-won was calling the Terran Alliance. The High Archon watched this happen with growing concern. The Council cannot allow a rival organization to form. It threatens the stability of galactic civilization. Then perhaps galactic civilization needs to be threatened, Ji-won said. For too long the Council has maintained peace through appeasement and fear. You have abandoned worlds in need. You have hidden the truth from your own people. That ends now. She began walking toward the exit, the representatives of the 14 new alliance members following her. As they left, more species began to move, leaving their council seats to join the growing group. Back on Earth, Dr. Hannah Park was analyzing the data they had recovered from destroyed Void ships. What she found was disturbing. The Void were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were refugees. Their organic ships were not weapons of war but desperate survival mechanisms. The dark energy they used was not meant to destroy, but to harvest resources for a species fleeing something worse. We need to tell Ji-won, Hannah said to Dr. June Park, who was reviewing the same data. Tell her what? June asked. That the enemy we just defeated was running from something even more dangerous? Yes, Hannah said. Because if the Void were running and they came to our galaxy, that means whatever they were running from might be coming too. June sat back in his chair. We just finished one war. Now you are telling me there might be another? I am telling you that we need to prepare, Hannah said. And we need allies who will believe us. Real allies. She began compiling her findings into a report for the Terran Alliance. If something had scared the Void Collective badly enough to make them flee across the galaxy, humanity needed to know what it was. Meanwhile, in deep space, the 4 surviving Void ships regrouped. They had never been defeated before. In hundreds of encounters across dozens of galaxies, they had always won through overwhelming force and superior technology. But the humans had not fought like civilized species. They had been chaotic, unpredictable, willing to sacrifice themselves in ways that made no logical sense. The Void's strategic algorithms could not account for such behavior. Inside the lead ship, the collective consciousness debated. Should they return with more forces? Should they avoid human space entirely? Or should they try to communicate? In the end, they chose something unprecedented. They sent a message toward Earth, not a threat or a demand. A question. Why did you fight when defeat was certain? On Earth's orbital defense station, General Sujin received the message. She thought about Captain Minho crashing his ship into the enemy. She thought about Yunahan destroying Titan Station to buy time for civilians to escape. She thought about Hanul Yoon and her pilots flying into impossible odds. She sent a reply. Because some things are worth dying for, and Earth is one of them. The Void considered this response. It was illogical, inefficient, emotional, but it had worked. Perhaps there was something to learn from these humans after all. 3 days later, another message arrived. We wish to negotiate. Sujin brought the message to Earth's leadership. They debated for hours. The void had killed thousands of humans, destroyed colonies, brought terror to the solar system. Could they be trusted? We fought them because we had no choice, Sujin said. But if they are willing to talk, we should listen, if only to understand what we are really facing. Ambassador Jiwon returned from the council station to help with negotiations. She met with Sujin and the rest of Earth's leadership council. The Terran alliance is growing, Jiwon reported. 23 species now. Small ones mostly, but they are enthusiastic. They believe in what we are building. What are we building? Sujin asked. Something the galaxy has not seen before, Jiwon said. A true alliance. Not based on fear or tribute, but on mutual defense and shared values. Species helping each other because it is right, not because they are forced to. The council will not like that, Dr. Hana Park said. No, Jiwon agreed. They will not. They have already begun spreading propaganda about us, calling us warmongers, barbarians, dangerous. Maybe we are dangerous, Sujin said. We just proved that primitives with nothing but courage and creativity can defeat enemies that scared the entire galaxy. That